Hi, and welcome to my garden. I'm going to do a really quick walkthrough of a strategy that we just put in place to try to limit the amount of deer damage that we were getting. I was lucky for a long time and the deer in the area did not hit my garden, but a few weeks ago they finally found it and we went from no deer damage to some pretty significant deer damage just over the course of a week. We put a very inexpensive deer fence in place a little over a week ago, and we went from having deer visiting about every other night to none. So even though this particular fence that I'm going to show you hasn't been in place for that long, the difference that we're seeing, I think, is enough to say, hey, this is worth a try. And if it doesn't work a long time, it was really cheap, and cheap is great. So let's take a look at it. Now, I can't claim to be the person who came up with this idea all by myself. I had heard this mentioned online in a Facebook group I'm in several months ago and just kind of filed it away and thought, okay, if the deer ever find my garden, this will be worth looking into. And then when they did find my garden and I had to do something really quickly before they demolished it, I did a little research and I found a blog post from Seed Savers Exchange that kind of gave a walkthrough of how to do it. I've made a modification to their process. I'm going to definitely point that out because I think that modification might work better. And I struggled to completely understand what they were recommending to do for the gate area of the fence, and that's where I made the modification. So let's take a look what this looks like. Okay, so we have a perimeter of T-posts, and on the T-post, let me just get in close and see if you can pick this up on the camera. This is fishing line. It's 30-pound test, and it's clear. The reason for that, you don't want it to be something that's either thick enough or of a color that deer could see it in the dark. The idea behind the fence is that they will, in the dark, try to enter the garden. They'll brush up against this line, feel it, not be able to see it, be startled, and leave. So basically the idea is to make a perimeter of two lines. So this is the upper line. There's also, let's see if you can see it, lower line down here. The lower line is about 18 inches off the ground, and then about another 18 inches up is where you'll get to the second line. And this is all the way around the garden with the exception of a gate area that you can open and close to go in and out. That is this right here. This is kind of like my gate latch. It is a 12-foot piece of plastic drain pipe. This is where I made a modification to Seed Saver Exchange's instructions for doing this fence. Everything else I did other than this particular piece here is exactly what they recommended. So let's, we'll come back to the gate at the end, but let's just kind of do a real quick walk around some of the T-posts so that you can see how this works. Okay, so your starting T-post, again, you're going to do your first line about 12 to 18 inches off the ground, and you're going to want to keep it pretty consistent around, and you're just going to tie off, let's see if you can see that, tie off, and I tied that just 3 knots to get it nice and tight, and then wrapped it 3 times around the post. And then once I did that, we just kind of continued down the line to the next post down there. And then when we got to the next post, we went around it 3 times as well, and just kind of continued around like that all the way around the perimeter. We tried to put T-post where the line didn't have too far to travel. We wanted to keep it fairly taut, and we were concerned if we had too long of a stretch without a T-post to wrap around, that it might be have a tendency to sag and not really stay taut. So we kind of spaced them out pretty much equidistant around, and each T-post, as we went around the perimeter, we wrapped it 3 times, continued to the next one, wrapped it 3 times, all the way around until we got to the last post where the gate would be, and let's walk over to that one. Okay, so we're over here, the last post, and in between the last post and the first post where we started is where the gate is. So on this last post, we actually tied off right here, just like we had tied on before on the other side. Tied off here. I wrapped it 3 times and then knotted it 3 times to get it nice and secure. And then after we finished that, we did the next line, which is up here. Tied it, wrapped it 3 times, and then went back around the opposite direction just because that was easier. All the way back around to that first post and tied off there. And when you've done that, you have 2 lines that are all the way around the perimeter, except for you'll have one side open, and that's where your gate's going to be. So let's talk about what goes into the gate. It's really simple too. It's simple to use and very simple to create. Okay, so we're over at the gate again, and let's talk about how this works. You are going to tie off choose whichever way that you want it to open. Tie off on the side that you want to stay stationary. You're going to do 2 lines just like you did all the way around. You'll tie off a top strand, tie off a bottom strand to your T-post that you want to stay stationary, and then on the other opposite side of the gate opening, you're going to have that drain pipe, and you're going to tie to the drain pipe. And the drain pipe, I have it where it slides over top of a T-post. When I want to open it, I slide the drain pipe up off the T-post, just take it over to the stationary side of the gate and put it there on top of that post. It stays there out of the way until I'm ready to close the gate back up. So let's just demo how that works really quickly. Okay, so we're back over here on the other side of the gate where the drain pipe is. And again, the drain pipe, I'm sort of using it as, I guess, what you would call like a gate latch. The line is tied off here, and part of the reason I really liked this drain pipe is it's got the ridges in it, and that makes a nice area to hold the line. You don't have to worry about it sliding down. I originally had planned to do this with PVC pipe, and same concept, just use the PVC pipe. And I was thinking about, okay, well, the PVC pipe, how am I going to make sure that the fishing line doesn't want to slide? And I was thinking through, okay, so maybe I can put rubber bands and that would make a shelf. And then we just happened to be in the store, the home improvement store, and I saw the drain pipe right beside the T-pipe. So I'm like, oh, problem solved, because it's already got the ledges for me. I don't have to worry about it sliding. It was just really easy to wrap it around it. And plus it's more flexible than the PVC pipe. So I think it's going to work out really well for us. It's worked really well so far for the last week or so. And eventually the plastic will deteriorate because the UV light's not good for plastic, but it was not that much for 12 feet of drain pipe. So I can just replace it as needed. But let me show you how it works. So it just slides right up. It's a little awkward doing this with one hand since I'm holding the camera, but it slides right up. You can see there was a T-pipe under it. Here's the drain pipe, and I would actually just walk it right over there to where the other T-post is, and then just put the drain pipe on top of that T-post. I'm not going to do that right now. I think you get the idea. But that's all there is to it. I mean, it was really fairly easy to make. The hardest part's driving the T-post when the ground's hard. Make sure you get a post driver and maybe some muscle. I used my husband for that. But yeah, it was really easy, and like I said, we've had it in place for just over a week now, and we went from deer visiting and browsing in my garden, treating it like they're all-you-can-eat buffet. They were coming every other night, and now we have had 0 deer damage since we put this in place. So still early to say that this is the perfect long-term solution, but it's working right now. Okay, so pros and cons of this approach. Big pro. It's cheap. It's just the cost of T-posts, ever how many you need to make a good perimeter around your garden area. Fishing line, also cheap. And in my case, the way I did it, 1 12-foot piece of drain pipe, and that actually was enough for me to do 2 different garden areas. Not much at all. I mean, we're talking under, I would say it was probably under $50, definitely under $75 total to do the whole thing. So cheap. Very quick. I think it took us maybe a couple hours, and that was mainly just because the ground was really hard. Trying to drive the post took a little bit of effort. Very replaceable. If something happens to the fishing line, just run another line around. The drain pipe eventually breaks down, just replace the drain pipe. Again, it was cheap. So what are some of the cons? It's obviously not as secure as some other types of fencing. When I posted about this in an online group, somebody said, hey, well, it's not going to protect against other types of pests, right? And my initial reaction was, well, would anybody think that it would? It's 2 pieces of fishing line and some T-post, right? Like, clearly, that's not going to protect against squirrels, birds, rabbits, or anything like that. So that's a con. If you have other types of pests doing damage that aren't deer, this is not the fence for you. I mean, I would think that would be obvious, but maybe it's not. So we'll state that very bluntly. It's just for deer. It's a deer fence. So if you've got other things, this is not going to solve that problem. One of the other problems, maybe this is a problem, I don't know, it depends on you and your style of gardening. It's not that attractive, particularly with the drain pipe, right? Like, I'm not winning any awards in Architectural Digest, Better Homes and Garden, or anything like that with this fence. But for me, I was more concerned about me being able to eat my veggies rather than like Bambi and Bambi's family. As much as I like deer, I don't like them, having an all-you-can-eat buffet in my garden. So for me, I was willing to put up with it not being super attractive. Now, I will freely admit that drain pipe, and I will show a shot here at the end a little bit further back so you can really get a sense of it. It adds a whole nother level of classiness with a K, right? Like, it looks kind of tacky, but it does its job and it's easy. Now, I'm way more concerned about the fact that it's cheap. Number one, it's cheap, and number two, it seems to be working. So for me, inexpensive and doing its job is way more important than being pretty, because I don't have a lot of funds to make it super pretty. If you do, knock yourself out. There are other options for fencing. For example, my brother he uses electric fencing, and it works really well, except for when you forget to turn it on. Like he did recently. The deer came in that one night and just completely demolished his garden. That can happen. You also could build a really tall fence to protect against deer, and then even put it a tighter fencing so that you can protect against like rabbits and stuff like that too. My uncle has that sort of setup. He has a 14-foot plus tall fence though, and that's material that I didn't want to buy, that I didn't have on hand. It was that would have been way more expensive than what I chose. So there's other options. There's options that may work better for you. But for me, cheap, simple, easy, that's what I was looking for, and this fulfilled on that. It seems to be working so far. If it stops working, I'll think of another solution, but I'm not out that much money. All right, so let me I'm going to switch this around and show you the view from a distance, just so you can bask in the glory of this fence. So, oh yeah, here it is. This is glorious, right? Oh yeah. So it's not pretty. I freely admit, not a pretty fence, but the fence is doing its job, and that's what I'm concerned about. So hope this is helpful. If you've got a deer problem, I'd say give it a try. If it doesn't work, you're not out that much money, and you can always try another option. Thanks so much for watching.